Hello, and welcome to Thank You Five. This is a weekly show hosted by Strawdog Theatre Company where we bring theater artists from around the globe into a conversation about live theater in a digital world, always with the spirit of gratitude and innovation. My name is Michael Reyes, and I will be your host for this episode. I am a Strawdog Ensemble member, class of 2018. I also have the privilege of serving as president of the board of directors. Side note, we're always looking for passionate and talented folks to join the board. So if you're interested, I'd love to talk to you. Just check out our website for more information. I have been a member of the great Chicago theater community, mostly as an actor and a singer, for a while. I was thinking about it the other day, and I'm like, I've been around since before email, really. So that's interesting. We'll have a whole other podcast on that. But I would like to also note, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can head over to strawdog.org /thank you five to join the chat, ask questions, and more importantly, vote on the questions so that we know what you which ones you want to hear from our panelists. And speaking of our panelists, let's go ahead and do some introductions, starting with Aja.
Hi, everyone. I am Aja. I use she, her pronouns. I am an actor, director, and dancer in Chicago. I've been here for 5 years, and yeah, I'm excited to talk about some theater stuff.
Fantastic. And we can move it over to EM. There you go.
Cool. Hey y'all, my name is Ian Davis. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm an actor, writer, and producer here in Chicago. And that's my intro.
Hi, I'm Tyler Meredith. I use she, her pronouns. I am an actor here in Chicago. I've been here about 12 years now, and I'm super excited to be here.
Thank you so much, Erin.
Hi, I'm Erin Basile. I'm not in Chicago. I used to be in Chicago, but it's been a while. I live in the greater Boston area in Framingham, Massachusetts, to be specific, and am the associate director for a performing arts center there. I don't actively do theater right now, but I still love it, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. So we're going to start, as we always do, with the question that I posed at the beginning. What is theater? What do we think theater is? What does theater mean to us? Who would like to go first? 2 seconds and I'll pick someone. Okay, Tyler, you're right next to me on my screen. So we'll start with you.
Great. Great.
Go, Tyler.
I mean, it means meaning something, and then what I think it is, I guess I would split into two different categories. But to me, it's always been a means of storytelling, of expressing things that maybe we don't normally get to express in a hyper-realized way or in a different way, or through the use of different rhetoric, through verse. I think that it is such a great vehicle to reflect how we are feeling, how we want to feel, how we dream about feeling. And I think, to me, it's always been magic. Like, seeing it as a child, it was magic. Seeing musicals, it seemed death-defying to me. It seemed like an Olympic feat that humans can make 42nd Street happen and tour that show and dance 8 shows. It seems otherworldly to me. So I think that means of storytelling as a way to kind of reflect on what we're going through at the time, if we're using it successfully, I think.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think we all have a story, right? Maybe that that is our moment that brought us into, I'm not gonna, we might get to it a little bit later, but my moment happened to be in the 6th grade, that made me want to lean into the magic of theater. I love that you use the word magic because theater, it is magic. I feel like, and it is real. Who else? Who else has a thought they'd like to share? Aja.
Theater to me is playful, it's transformative, it's community, or it's community and it's collaborative. For me, either being on the stage and performing, I really think about my body, or I think about transforming into the character, thinking about how the character walks, how the character talks. So it's a very like physical experience for me. It reminds me that I'm on this earth and I get to plant myself and have a voice. And when I'm an audience member, I get to witness and observe, and I get to analyze or feel and have thoughts that I can take away for later and talk about those thoughts with other people.
I want to jump on the idea of theater as community because that has always rung really, really true for me as community and as a way to create connection across demographics, across boundaries, across a whole lot of other ways we separate ourselves. Theater was always a way for me that felt like I could cross all of those boundaries and reach people who I might not hear from or be able to talk to. I don't know, community connection, all of those things were always a big part of what theater is for me.
I think I can sort of like come back around full circle because I loved this question so much, and it gave me reminders of my test anxiety in high school because I was like, oh God, what do I say? How do I respond to this truthfully? Because I think it's it feels like such a simple question, but it's so vast, and it's based on what part of the experience you are doing, whether you are the actor on stage, whether you are the audience member. I would love to have this question be posed to non-performing audience members because they are the reason we do the art, because if they aren't there, we go home. If an actor is sick, there's usually an understudy to pop in, but if there's an audience, the show does not happen. And I know that we definitely learned new ways to do theater in the digital age, when the pandemic hit, which I think sort of like blew open the idea of what is theater, because then it was the whole, is Zoom more film than theater? If it's pre-recorded, what does that mean? And so I'm sure we'll probably get into that later. But one of the things that I want to say both Tyler and Aja had mentioned was the idea of like, as an actor being in your own body. I do think it is as an actor, it's a way of reflecting yourself or reflecting the ideas of other people and sort of slipping on that skin. And I think it's just, I would love to actually pose that question to everybody, like what brought them into theater? Like what was that moment? Because I'd be incredibly fascinated to hear that, because I think that is a personal experience that I think really impacts what the trajectory of your life, both inside and outside of theater, is to a degree.
I love that. That's just the best question. I'm so glad you said that. It's so good and so hard.
Yeah.
Because
did we
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, because I can go, since I asked the question, I never want to be that person where I'm like, what is this really hard question? And then like slink to the background and watch everybody else figure it out. Because it sort of all came to me as you were talking, Tyler, because the very first thing I did, my mom forced me, because she cuts hair, and there was a woman who was doing like a community theater thing. And I was a huge sports kid. Like that's what I did. I was basketball, I was soccer, and my mom was like, why don't you do a play? And I was like, I don't want to do a play. She was like, do the play. and so I went and I did it, and it was called The Princess and the Dragon. And there weren't, I mean, per usual, very young, there weren't enough boys. involved. There were all of the women, but not enough men at the time. And so I ended up volunteering to play the prince, because the prince and the princess were twins. And I didn't think twice about it. I was like, I feel very comfortable in that. And, you know, all of the girls around me were like, ew, that's weird. And I was like, I don't see a problem in this. And here I am so many years later, trans non-binary, top surgery. And it sort of is a really interesting way to sort of think back and be like, oh, I was not able to really express myself in that way. And I found a place that I could do it so fluidly and so easily. And it took me like 2 more decades to really have that thing catch up with me. But it transformed me in that way. And I think that's why I fell in love with it, was the transformation process, and also finding yourself within these characters who you may not have thought early on you connected with, and then sort of finding those common grounds. So that's my answer. Yeah.
Acting is truth, right? Yeah. Tyler, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, could I give a twofold answer?
Yeah.
One
as many folds as
is
you like.
right. One. So sorry if I snort. Two is one definitely has to go back to 42nd Street. And that literally was, that curtain is up and there are all these feet. And I just remember like it makes me cry. It was so overwhelming. And my dad would always take me, there's this great local theater in Fayetteville, Arkansas, where I'm from. And we got great touring productions, and he would always take me. And that was like, you know, one of my earliest memories was seeing Crazy for You. And it made me obsessed with Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, and you know, it really pushed my love of dance even further. But EM, twofold to what you said. I think you're so right. There absolutely is that moment of seeing kind of like stepping into yourself, not realizing, you know, that you've self-actualized like into the small human as a little human in this art form that I think so many of us can relate to. And I started going to Shakespeare camp, and I became so obsessed with the Scottish play that I made my 5th grade class do an entire production of it, and I directed it and starred in it. And I feel like that that explained a lot to my teachers, it explained a lot to me. But that moment of, you know, seeing, I didn't understand why I couldn't cast myself as Macbeth. That didn't make any sense to me. And I was like, but I want to play Hamlet, so I'm going to play Hamlet. I want to, you know, why this doesn't make sense. Why can't a 5th grader play this role? But I think just, and you know, having those moments of inspiration, like the tap dancing and, you know, falling in love with Shakespeare, those things just really ring true. But
for personal connections, right? I mean, it's like, you know, truth I'm hearing a lot about. I don't know, Erin, Aja?
The Lion King, if we're talking about things that wowed us. I saw Lion King on Broadway when I was 9, and I thought it was gonna be some Disney on Ice. No offense to Disney on Ice. But I thought it was gonna be cartoonish, right? And cartoons in my 9-year-old brain are meant for the TV. I felt like it was going to come off cheesy if I was going to see it live. You know, this movie that I saw in an animated form, but to see on Broadway, to see the puppetry and the dancing, to see these people transform into animals, and the costumes also felt like I was transported not only just to into the story, but transported into Africa, into like, especially with me being, you know, a Black artist, that was, I saw home, I saw my homeland, and that made me go, wow, I can see familiar things on a stage, and they can be theatrical, they can be big, it's full of spectacle, and it looks beautiful. So that was like my first time like seeing theater and being wowed by it. And I remember later on, like in high school, wanting to get more involved in theater because I have a dance background. So in my dance background, I have performed on stage before, but dance is different from theater. It's still like a genre of theater, but dance is a bit more uniformed, it's a bit more disciplined. So that what are the words, like that was cool, but then to like perform theater, I got to be a bit more organic, a bit more individualistic. And that was a scary but beautiful journey to go into theater, because then I had to learn more about myself in order to play characters. As a dancer, you can still be a great dancer even if you're not necessarily a character, because sometimes in dance it's all about the uniformity, it's all about moving as one. But in theater, you want to show humanity. Yeah, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Erin, what's your origin story?
Well, that makes it sound so much cooler than it is. It was multifaceted, multi-phased. It probably started in the 6th grade, actually, when I succumbed to peer pressure and played the dentist in a 6th grade produced and directed production of Little Shop of Horrors on our cafetorium stage. And just I had so much fun. And we were 11 and it was ridiculous, and we did not have the rights, but we did it anyways. And then I started doing children's theater. The town I grew up in had a great children's theater program, and high school theater, and went to college and was like, I'm not doing this anymore. And took a big step back until my friend Abigail, who actually was also a Strawdog ensemble member for a couple of years back in the early 2000s, when we were sophomores in college, she convinced me to come back to the fold. But I did it on the tech side this time. So I studied lighting and sound design, and there was something magic, to go back to Tyler's magical theater moments, about what those pieces add to a performance, how they work in tandem with the human beings on stage, that just blew my mind. So I did that through college, and then moved to Chicago, because why not? Where I probably had my final phase, and discovered storefront theater and new work, and developing scripts with playwrights through, and actors, all from like first draft through to end product. And the first one of those I did was with Hank, the True Ballad of Fall's Blessings, back in, I don't want to say how many years ago. And when I left Chicago and moved back to Boston, I kept doing new work and realized that that was like working on underproduced plays or brand new plays, was where my real love lied. And I was lucky enough to work with a fantastic playwright here, Kirsten Greenidge, several times on work she was developing, and it was perfect. Yeah, so that was sort of my theater journey. And then I had kids, and I kind of took a giant step back. So now I work a regular day job, and I only do that day job. And I haven't been in a rehearsal room or a theater except as a patron, probably since 2017.
But that's so important, right? Like we have mentioned in a couple of these conversations, and sometimes I try to prompt it, but like it just came up naturally this time, that the importance of audience. And I'm also hearing in the group here, like the personal connection. Since you posed it, I'm going to go ahead and answer it.
Yes.
My own personal origin story. Well, my grandparents were part part of the group that founded the oldest, and it's continuing to run now, the oldest community theater in Ohio. So
okay.
it was always sort of there, like it was sort of matter of fact for me. But the turnaround moment was there was some assembly, some tour of something, and I don't know what it was. It had a nautical theme. I was sitting in one of the rises at the back of the theater. That was the gymnasia theater auditorium thing, and one of the there was a moment in the production where one of the actors goes like that, and he pointed right at me.
Come on, blocking. Go ahead, Michael.
He picked you.
He pointed exactly at me, not anyone else around me. He pointed right to me. So that's when I knew. But Erin, I feel like I feel you as well, about the sort of process. I mean, we're human beings, we're people. Like we grow. Like I feel like I'm hearing. Tell me if I'm wrong about this, but I feel like I'm hearing like a deep personal connection. Obviously, like I think this is where most people start their careers, or in whatever it is, right? Like they have their personal passion around the thing, and then it grows into something else. I certainly didn't consider an audience when when I was thinking about theater to begin with. Somebody had to teach me in college that that's an audience is actually necessary. So I growth and personal personal connection to all of that. Magic, I'm hearing a lot of in this conversation here too. So I just I love hearing all of that. What so I think we sort of answered the question maybe why for all of us, but why theater? We're talking about what is theater, but why? I mean, there's film, and that's a little more accessible. It's a little bit cheaper, maybe. You don't have to leave your house to be entertained. We're all in our own home now, having this conversation. Why? And when I say theater, I'm asking about what live theater. Why specifically live theater? If we have, if you want to talk about theater, not in a live situation, also that's cool too. But we all feel a personal connection to it. We all feel the magic in it. So, but that's us. Why for the rest of the world?
For the athleticism.
The athleticism, yeah.
For the athleticism, I think film is athletic a different way. I think when I see theater, I usually like seeing people bust through doors and they're booming and they have these like either big voices or just they're connected, they're grounded. And yeah, I'm here for the athleticism. There's more movement. I see people moving from place to place, and I think when I see people up on stage, and I hope other people feel the same way in the audience, that like when a person is in front of me and they are big, that I'm like, wow, there's less breaks. It's from start to finish. Usually in film, there's like action, cut. So there are moments to go in, go out, go in and go out. In theater, you are in, you're present, and you have to find ways to stay on the wagon if you fall off, whether that be physically, mentally, and you also have teammates too that can pick you up or help you along in the journey. So that's yeah.
Yeah, no, that's what it's I think the focus on athleticism, that's so much of it, but it's you have to do it right, and you have to do it right this time, because there's not oh, hold on, I didn't do that right, let me go back and try again. It's do it right, or do it the way you do it and then figure out the rest. There's no take two. And that adds to, I'm going to keep bringing back the magic because I think that was spot on, Tyler, but that adds to the magic of seeing live performance. Audience members know they're seeing a different show than the show before. It's not, you watch a movie over and over, you're watching the same movie. You see a show 5 times, you saw 5 different shows.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
think
So-
there's something so ethereal and ephemeral about it, that it is, I always think about the Prospero speech of, it's like, it's all dust, it all fades, nothing's permanent, which, I mean, what a reflection of life, not to be existential, but
Be existential. Be existential. Let's go.
Magic.
Theater is
but
like
dust, yes. But there is, I think that it's like that none of it's tangible. I mean, yeah, like you said, Erin, it's like it's different every time. And I was listening to Smartless, I guess it was this week, and they were talking about, they're like, wow, theater is so hard. And I was like, it is, like, doing the same thing, yeah, for 8 times a week.
That makes the magic that much better, though, doesn't it? Right? I mean, like, people,
Yeah.
why theater? People need magic in their lives. People need, I mean, certainly, around these days, but like, it is hard, but when it comes, when we're able to do it, it is magical, and like, we need magic in our lives.
Gonna say one of the things, it's twofold. One, I think there is a more immediate accessibility for young people to experience and participate in theater than film. I think it's probably different nowadays with iPhones. I'm thinking about myself. I'm not going to date myself, but we did not have phones in my middle school. It was the very early beginnings of phones. And so, it was drama club. We didn't have like film club. And so I think that was an accessible road to not only watch but participate. Film felt like this other thing because it was like People magazine, and it was like the Tom Cruises, and it was the pretty boys, and it's like you wanted to be real and rough in theater and wear old age makeup as a 13-year-old because it looked good in the light. Like it was that type of it was that type of thing. And then the other part, Michael, I feel like you had the magic of it. I love nothing more than going to storefront or non high budget theater and having people wow me with effects. And I'm talking like simple effects, like I'm talking about like it just like that type of stuff. One of the, or just like experiences, like 3 very quick ones. One was at Red Orchid. My very first storefront show I ever saw was Abigail's Party, and Keir Fitzgerald threw a lighter to Mirka and she missed it and it fell into someplace, and I watched 5 brilliant actors break and have a beautiful moment of trying to get it the fuck back together, and they couldn't, and it was beautiful, and I had no idea what I was witnessing at the time. But like, and I was right there, and I was like, oh my God, if this is what Chicago theater is, I want in. Also watching, I think it was Brad Aiken say, it's another Red Orchid, Brad Aiken say ladder 136 times in the Aliens, and watching somebody have a mental breakdown in front of you on a bench saying the same word over and over again, and it having a different meaning every single time he said it. And watching something in Hugon Hall, RIP, listening to the song Sail, I think it was Forks and Hope, I think that was the theater company. They created a like dragon out of a like box, and they had moving eyes, and it was just, and again, it was in a long hall. I'm so sad that space is gone. And it was so fucking cool. And it just, there's and you cannot do that in any other form. And I think that's why people come back to it. Not that I'm like turned off by like, you know, the multi-million-dollar theater things, because you can do really cool things with that. I've seen, you know, huge things shift that I did not expect to shift that are wonderful. But I think people sometimes really underappreciate just how much imagination you can have in the theater. And money is great, and I'm always like, yay money, theater needs money, but there are also resources that you can do to create pure magic out of nothing. And I think that's why we always go back I think it always goes back to play.
Yeah.
To piggyback off of what Yam said, there's something about when I go to a movie theater, I do see something spectacular, but I think I expect that because there is the screen is, it feels like a different world versus in theater. It feels like it's a part of my world. And especially if it's like a storefront where they do something that I didn't expect and it's right in front of me, it's at my toes. It just makes it go like, I don't know. It just hits me in a different way versus with film where I think, oh, that's cool, but that's like across town. But in theater, it's like, oh my God, that was cool. And it's right in front of, it's like my next door neighbor. Oh my God, I could go over to my next door neighbor and we could talk about these cool things together.
Is there something about the, you know, we can see great acting on film, and we do. We can see, you know, pared down production values on film, and we do. But, you know, the live aspect of it, you know, I think we've said here as a group, you know, we feel something, we feel some magic about the live aspect of it, and you know that's the thing that's the differentiator, right? Is what, but you know, we're moving into a world, not to bring technology into it, but we're moving into a world where, you know, digital gets more and more live every day. So, I mean, isn't that just like, will we be okay if this conversation that we're having right now, when we all have the right speakers and we're all on the right microphones and we all have the right lighting and we're all watching it in that way, are we going to be okay with it just being that? Or does it, is live critical?
I run a performance venue, and we went streaming during the pandemic, like so many people did, and it was fine. But when we hosted our first concert post-pandemic, it wasn't just the live aspect of it, it was the shared experience. And I think that's true in the theater world as well as the music world. It's it's from an audience perspective, that moment of knowing that the person sitting next to you is having that same experience with you in that moment. And you can't, I have yet to see, even with the perfect lighting, the perfect microphone, the perfect everything, a way for that to exist digitally. I mean, you even kind of get it when you go to the movies, because you're still sharing that experience with a group of people. There's still that shared understanding of what you're doing at that moment. You lose the live factor. So maybe if we were sitting in a room watching this, but with other people, there's something about needing to experience that with others, not just on your couch.
I think, yeah, that need for community seems so irreplaceable.
Yeah.
And so few times have I experienced that in a movie theater. I mean,
Right.
Avengers Endgame, like, you know, I mean, that maybe that's, you know, like truly like a movie of that, you know, like magnitude. But there is, I mean, yeah, going back to the theater for the first time, or seeing, I guess, yeah, seeing the first show I had seen after the pandemic, it was like no one had ever seen a musical in their life. I mean, people were
I literally cried.
screaming. Yeah, I absolutely, I cried the entire, I was like, I don't even care what this musical is. I don't care what it's about. This thing, and it was great, but like everyone was just screaming at these actors, you know, and I think it's just that appreciation of community, the appreciation to be
Mhm.
able to share that
Mhm.
collective experience. And EM, you said something that I think, you know, also so vital. It's like you lose those tiny moments. You lose that, like, those things that you can't, that you're going to cut, or that you know, that wouldn't end up in the take. You lose, like, I was thinking about watching Fran Guinan see this wine bottle roll down a stage, and just watched it roll down a rake for, like, I mean, it had to have been 2 minutes, and just in silence, and everyone was sobbing laughing. I was like, you can't create that. Someone would have cut that. And but I would watch him watch a wine bottle for hours, you know? Like, it's those are the great things that we would lose if, you know, if we didn't have the chance to experience it together.
And
Mhm.
there's an element of, like, you know, rooting for that, maybe, you know, like 100,000 years ago I did a production of Forever Plaid. I don't know if you know Forever Plaid, but there's
Mhm.
one song where there's a ketchup bottle and you like do a dink 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 on
Hmm.
the ketchup bottle. The production team at the time decided that what I needed was an actual ketchup bottle with actual ketchup in it. So of course, you know, in my enthusiasm, I'm like dink dink dink, crack, ketchup all over the stage, right? Horrifying. I'm probably, like, you know, the outlier amongst Americans in that I hate ketchup.
Hate
Somehow it's
ketchup.
all, yeah, it's all
Yes.
over
Thank
the
you. Sorry, I got
floor.
really,
It's
my whole family
glass.
loves it.
It's whatever. And it was a solo. So I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? So being the
Mhm.
collaborative actor that I am, I continued singing while my while my the fellow actors on stage did, like, you know, their Forever Platy dancey, kind of like sweeping it up and like cleaning it up and mopping the floor in front of me, all within like 2 minutes, because these are not long songs, right? This is not long at all. So it was we received a, you know, the whole group, like, you know, received a collective, like the audience was like crazy with, like, how it had not, you know, I mean, that particular show, I don't know, maybe it did have something to do with how the show was, but there is something about, like, when, you know, let's talk about, like, let's say there wasn't something, some extraordinary circumstance, a lighter or a bottle or a ketchup bottle or whatever, you know, there is something about, like, you know, when you're deeply invested in the story, and there is, you know, you want this someone to succeed, and or not succeed, or whatever it is, um, that, I mean, is it, I'm about to answer the question, I don't mean to, but is it different in film? Like in film, you sort of like, I don't know, there's a level of investment that I feel like is maybe more, uh, that exists more in live theater. um, is it stakes, is it accountability, do we feel all of that? I mean, is that
I
why?
think
Yeah, go ahead.
it's unpredictability, in my opinion. Um, when things are live, whether in person or digitally, I don't know. And if things don't go according to plan, then there's an excitement. Like if I was an audience member and I saw you break the ketchup bottle, I would have thought, then, was that planned? And then I would see on your face, maybe that wasn't planned. So I feel like there's a different type of stimulation when I see something not go according to plan. And then I try and figure out, okay, how are they going to clean this up? Is he going to find a way to tombe pas de the ketchup off the stage? Is someone going to come from down? My imagination gets activated because I am now like, how are people going to react? While in film, because everything goes according to plan, because, you know, even if there are happy mistakes, I wouldn't know about that until I read in it about it in an article, you know, later on. I don't I don't know that it's a happy mistake on in a film, but in theater, there is this, like, I don't know, there is this, like, was that a mistake? Was that planned? Wow, that's cool. Oh, that wasn't planned. What are they gonna do
Does
next?
that does that take you too out of it though? I mean, does it, like, you know, okay, like, clear, like, I think we can surmise that, like,
Mhm.
I wasn't supposed to crack a ketchup bottle and have ketchup all over the floor. you know, like this, what does that do to the show? What does that do to the author's intent? I don't know, you have your hand up.
I
here.
think that depends on the audience member.
Yeah,
That's my answer.
yeah.
Mhm.
And I would say the thing that I keep hearing over and over again is like the raw and realness of it's the whole like we're doing it live like type feel, because
Mhm.
I think society with social media and the filters and the TikTok, like everything, everybody is able to present themselves perfectly. Like we now have the access to do that and to do all of the filters and to do all of that. And I think people go back to the theater because you can't really have filters in theater. Like I've started to take random photos on my phone without looking at them. Like I'm actually like starting to like revert back to like the 90s in terms of like how I'm trying to ingest things, because I want to see my friends laughing in real time. I don't want to do the whole fake like type thing. I've seen it, it's been done, and I'm like, if somebody's mouth feels too big, I won't post it, but it's for me. Like it just I think there is a feeling of honesty and realness, and not necessarily like nowhere to hide type thing, but I think that's also why we all do it, because it's incredibly vulnerable. The journey of doing art is vulnerable. And I think it's harder to see that vulnerability through mediums that can be digitized and perfected, and getting rid of the ins and outs of mistakes. There's something about theater that you can't. And then you have this beautiful story that we're all telling each other. Like all of us have that, and that is from the tiny community theater that you see to like a Broadway. Like it happens everywhere. One of my friends saw Mary Poppins get stuck in the middle of the ceiling after her last descent, and she kept saying goodbye, and the kids kept saying goodbye. And at one point the SM was like, we're gonna hold, and literally they said Mary Poppins went from like this cheery thing to like this, just like hanging 30 feet above the audience. And that group experienced that. And like I love it. I love it so much. It's so human. It's so human.
Mhm.
It's like the good version of Schadenfreude, right?
Yeah.
I mean, 'cause she's
Exactly.
There's a great story about Shoshana Bean when she was playing Elphaba on Broadway, getting because they have a no-fly plan. So if something happens and the rig doesn't work and they can't fly at the end of Defying Gravity, they have a plan, which is essentially that everyone crouches below you so you look tall, I guess. And and they sing up at you, which I think is hilarious. But so one day she said she had a bad show anyways, but she got to the end and she wouldn't fly and she wouldn't fly. And so she just stood there and held the broom up, and she slowly saw everyone crouch to the ground. And she was like, I added every riff I've ever wanted to riff, and I just walked off the stage. I was like, that's incredible. What an amazing thing to witness.
That's fantastic. Look, we're never going to get away from that. Like I'm like, what's the purpose of theater? We're never going to get away from well, but then here's this other story, because that's important, right? It's important. It's fun. It's play. I mean, what what do we think about play? This is a personal question of mine. I don't know if I was anything to do this panel, but what do you think about the aspect of play in theater? Kind of taking us on a bit of a tangent. Somebody said to me at one point, like, why do you, why, I have been told, I don't know if this is true, but why do you look not your age? And I'm like, I think it's because I play all the time. I think it's, I mean, even in a serious piece or whatever, I mean, it's still play. I still get a deep sense of satisfaction out of doing all of that. So I don't know, do you all experience the same thing? Like Erin, even I know you're not in it. I know you spent some time a technical person after phase 3, I think it was,
Phase
you're
4 or
after,
5, yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
But like, I guess I'm sort of interested in, like, like, how does play happen in your space now?
I mean, that's kind of tricky. It's not the same. I'll tell you that much. Right now, I work mainly in music, but not as a musician, as a talent buyer and programming director, I guess. So I'm not necessarily involved on the artistic side at all, except maybe in the programming choices I make as like an organization on the whole. Um, but when I get to play now is when I can't find a lighting designer for a show and end up behind the board myself. And I actually do, I call that playing. I will call home and tell my husband, I have to stay at work. I get to play on the board tonight. And it's play, it's fun. And I get to make lights go flashy, flashy. Um, and I enjoy that. And I enjoy adding to the show in some way, in the little way that I do, because we're a small venue, so it's never anything crazy. But that's otherwise, most of my job is pretty dull. It's pretty
No,
administrative.
I mean, if
Um,
you're making choices on music is also very important, I feel like, in people's lives. And
Mhm.
you're making choices on, or helping to facilitate people being able to have that piece of joy in their lives. I feel like that's, as
I
significant as
I
any other.
think I mean I enjoy my job, and I like programming a venue in that way. But it's a very different, it's like apples and oranges, because it's not the performance aspect, it's not the putting on the show. I still get to do some of that, but that's not like the focus of what I'm doing day to day.
Mhm.
Curating a season is still a lot of fun, but it's less based on what I like and more based on what I know my patronage will like. Um,
Mhm.
which is an interesting exercise, generally speaking, because I have to think, okay, you're not you're this like general consensus of the people who live in your metro region and will come to your
Mhm.
shows. But yeah, so play for me is now when I get to be behind the board. And I don't know. I'm wondering when I bring back more play.
Mm.
Well, I mean, you have more folds to get through, I feel
Mhm.
like. But it's interesting that once again we're talking about audience, that us as audience members. I don't know who else has a perspective on play.
I would like to add on to Erin's ability to curate the season. I think, in a way, curating is a sense of play. If you get the opportunity to learn your patrons either on an individual level or as a whole, and tossing up ideas of a play with your colleagues and be like, oh, maybe this play would, maybe the patrons would like this, or maybe the patrons would like that. Maybe the patrons will feel sympathy or feeling like different type of emotions. I don't know. That was just an idea that I thought, and like, we don't have to be married to it, but I was like, huh. In a way, curating could also be playful. Yeah. Um, to answer your question, Michael, about playing, I feel like in off stage world or off camera world, if I play, or if I don't want to use play in quotation marks, but if I like play off stage, I'm scared to make a mistake. And if I make a mistake, then I affect everybody else around me in a not so positive way. And sometimes I can feel like weight, pressure. I don't want to give anybody more work than they have to. Because some people enjoy work and other people, they are working to, provide income for themselves and for their families. So, everybody has a different relationship with work, but that's another conversation. But I feel like the work in theater or in acting, performing, if I make a mistake or if I play, people are like, oh, yes, yes, and let's add on to that. Or even if they disagree with me, they still want my opinion on why I made that choice. And it's a constant, what is it? It's a constant, like I get to like tell people, oh, these were my thoughts, or this is where the direction that I was going. And then people will go, okay, I don't fully agree with that direction, but I'm going to take some of your, I like to speak sometimes in metaphors, and one of my metaphors is painting, right? So someone will take my blue paint, right? I'll paint the whole canvas blue. And a person in theater might be like, okay, maybe we're not looking for the whole canvas to be blue, but we're going to take some of that blue that you painted and we're going to add some of your blue, and then we'll add green. Okay. Can we have you go in the direction of green so we can then paint this field or the sky, right? And I really enjoy that. It feels like an ongoing dialogue or conversation when, as a performer or as a theater maker, you do the work, versus off stage where it feels like if that wasn't the right answer, it kind of just falls flat. It kind of just goes, end of conversation. Now let's focus on what is the right thing to do.
So there's some safety, there's like some agency, I feel like, in there that might be a little more unique in our world maybe than in other worlds. Makes it easier to play, hopefully.
Yeah, I feel like you can be messy, and being messy isn't a derogatory term on in theater making. You can be messy. Messy can be seen as colorful. You can like do a Rolodex of choices. You could be like, let me make this choice. No, let me do this. Let me do that. I'm currently rehearsing for a show right now. I am understudying in that show, but I'm witnessing these actors like go through different choices where they go like, I'm going to do this. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do that. And throw that away. I'm going to do this. Actually, let me minimize that, or let me expand upon it. You just get to see like an artist molding themselves in real time. And that's beautiful. Where I feel like in the real world, we don't mold, or if we do mold, there's shame attached to it, you know?
One of the things too, Aj, I love the whole like description of in the room. And one of the things that I've been mulling over as of late is, how do you play when you're not in the room or in project? And like, how do you continue that play and momentum? Because I think, again, a big reason why all of us went into theater or the art form is because we love to play and we don't want to do the drudgery of the muggle job. At least not have that be like our entire being. And it's been fascinating because I feel like nobody really sets you up in school, whether you major in the arts or not, of how to continue to play and be, which to me translates to being curious, being silly, and trying things that you may not feel fully comfortable in. Like, I'll be completely honest, right before this call, I decided to dance out my nerves with a song, and I don't do that. I don't dance. It's not what I do. And I was like, I'm just going to try this, because I was like, I have this energy and I know I'm going to need to sit. How do I express that before I sit down and I'm like in my parents' basement and I just like put on a song and just danced up and down, and then I sat down and proceeded to have Zoom issues, as we knew from earlier. But that dance helps me calm down. But like, I always ask people, like, what do you do when you are out of theatrical play or in between work? Because I think that's when sometimes actors and they don't know who they are, and I think it is so imperative and important to know who you are, both within an acting and rehearsal room versus outside. At the same time, my answer in terms of play.
Yeah, 1000%. I feel like that was this weird, or my therapist would say, an opportunity. I feel like it's like a the pandemic presented this opportunity to kind of, as artists, find play. That was actually a question that I was thinking about, Michael, when you were asking this, of like, what, yeah, I mean, exactly what you said, Em, like, what do you, where do you find play outside, like in those lulls? And you phrased that so well. It really, like, it's so easy to get lost. And it feels kind of cavernous. But if I saw it as an opportunity, then then there's so much room for joy. I mean, yeah, I love that you said you don't usually dance, and then you dance it out. It's like those, yeah, finding those moments like seem almost unavoidable, I guess, as artists. But yeah, that's fascinating. I'm like, have a whole conversation about that.
Then maybe we will at some
Okay.
point. We've got about 3 minutes left, and I realize the potential weight of the question I'm about to ask, and have answers in 3 minutes. So, like, we'll try to do a little bit of a round robin on this, but I'm very interested in hearing from all of you all. Where is theater going? Maybe it's not going anywhere. Maybe theater is as is. I mean, it'll grow, it'll change or whatever. But where is it? What's your first impression when I say that? Like, where is it going? What is theater we've talked about? Where is it going?
The
I'm
looks
gonna
on all
say
of our faces.
the word that I immediately came to mind was forward, because I think there's always motion. I don't know if and forward could be very small. Forward could be a snail's pace to some people, but I do feel like theater is always moving in some type of way, whether through a small mass or a large mass of individuals. So for some odd reason, that was the word that came to mind. So I just wanted to speak it.
Yeah, brilliant. No wrong answers here.
It kind of feels like it's like, in my mind, like dissolving, and I mean phoenixing, I guess. Like that's kind of, yeah, that's how I feel.
That's awesome.
I I want, I don't know. I wonder if this is like what I desire theater to be moving forward. I don't know if that's what it's going to be, but accessible, so then all walks of life can experience it. And I also think too, different rhythms. I can see theater going forward. Play structures can have different rhythms. Yeah.
Cool. That's amazing.
Mhm.
I like EM's answer.
Mhm.
I just think it's always going forward. But I don't know where that is, or what that means for where we'll be in
Mhm.
5, 10, 15 years. But it's just
Mhm.
it'll be somewhere forward from here.
Mhm.
I mean, my answer would be nowhere, meaning that theater ain't going nowhere. It's been here since, there were caves. It's going to be here
Mhm.
when AI takes over the world. So
Mhm.
let's just all get used to that. Another amazing conversation. The hour has flown. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We're going to pivot now, as we have been at the end of these conversations, to something completely different, to help us wrap up. And I'm going to ask each one of our panelists to think about a book or a play or something recent or beloved that they would recommend to our audience. And while you are thinking about that and ruminating on that, I am going to I have some thank yous to get through. Not through. I have some thank yous that I would like to say. 5 thank yous. First, To our panelists, thank you, thank you, thank you. You're all amazing. I can't tell you how much we appreciate you being here. Your dedication to the conversation in the art form and your willingness to share in this conversation, it's amazing. Next, thank you to Kyle Hammond, who created and produces this show, and you can't see him, but he's ever present behind the scenes right now. Thank you also to officehours.global, Edmund Ruiz, and Manda Machine for helping to make all of this possible. Strawdog Theatre Company is an ensemble, so this show is made possible by that ensemble. So thank you to our ensemble friends. We run on a free theater model. Our productions are available to anyone free of charge. So we can only do this with generous donations from our community, and you can find out more about information on that, about donating or becoming a member to continuously support our work, making it accessible on our website, strawdog.org. And finally, thank you, speaking of audience, thank you to everyone who has joined in, either live or viewing at their leisure at some other time, maybe participating in the chat room and supporting this show. Thank you, thank you, thank you to all of you. Okay, so recommendations. I'm gonna go, let's see, clock is on Ian, we'll start with you because I see you first over here. My screen. We don't have to start with
pressure.
You. No, we can. I'm going to go through, I'm going to be a meanie and do three, but just very, very quickly. One is Putting It Together. It's a beautiful book that talks about how Sunny the Park with George was created. Some of the old like pages that they have of him creating like Dot's monologue into that first song is beautiful. It's a really awesome way to just look into the mind of two creators who were co-creating something that turned out so beautiful. I love the book Marie Kondo, The Magic of Tidying Up, because I do believe if your life is a clutter, it's hard to get into the correct mindset when you are going into a rehearsal room. So I just think like in terms of like human life thing, that's just a great book. And then the closest I've ever to joined a cult was The Artist's Way. I just recently completed it. And it's so flipping good. It was on my shelf for a decade and I never touched it. And I finally did. And I just highly recommend. It's just a beautiful 12-week cleanse just to sort of get your thoughts about it.
Awesome. Who's next?
Actor, I recommend The Actor in the Text by, I think her name is Cicely Berry, because as an actor, it's good to know how to use breath and put it into words. That book also talks not only just like breath and language, but it's like a linguistic approach to the work. I also recommend The Power of Now if we're talking about like a life book. Yes, The Power of Now. This idea of like emptying your mind so then you can fill it with the things that you want to fill is something that I connect to in this moment in my life. Yeah.
Awesome.
I would say Thinking Shakespeare by Barry Edelstein. Just wonderful, and I can't recommend it enough for anyone who loves verse or likes plays or likes language. I think it's incredibly insightful. I also reread Tempest recently, and it just blew the mind. It's truly, I think, it's ever so relevant and so poignant, and good moving into fall. Yeah.
Awesome. Erin, bring us home.
I don't have anything industry related to recommend, but I recently finished the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin, and I'm a giant nerd, and sci-fi and fantasy are kind of my jam, and it was some of the best writing overall, like the trilogy as a whole, that I've read in a long time. The world building was really fantastic, and I highly recommend it.
Awesome. That's magic. I'm going to go ahead and make a plug of my own. It's not a book. I just listened to a podcast, Hidden Brain. The most recent episode is on savoring moments in life. So I'm just going to leave it out there. Hidden Brain, Shankar Vedantam. I'm going to let you read that, and then I will just say thank you again We will see you all, either here on the panel or you in the audience all next week for a conversation with more theater artists. Please submit your questions in advance. If you want to join or have a friend, again, go to strawdog.org. Thank you, 5. And thank you for watching. Y'all have a great night.